Thank you very much, Jeff, and also, of course, thanks to a tremendous panel and a lot of creative ideas here. We're not at the point where in 3 minutes we can really summarize what has been said, but just for the sake of a little bit of clarity, I thought it would be useful to take the theme of challenges and opportunities that have come through time and again from our from the very beginning and with Ambassador Yamada. We've said a lot about China. Its rising capabilities, more proactive behavior, particularly its manufacturing strengths and the way that those have also related to service sectors like shipping. A lot of this has been driven by the globalization and the deepening global interdependence that we've had since the collapse of the Berlin Wall and what looked like it was the waning of the Cold War. I was quite struck, I have to say, with a lot of what was said about technology and the way that technology has deepened the challenges that we have. Several people on the panel here and previously, of course, were talking about cyber, just as one case in point. And also we talked about automation, the demanning of vessels, and of course, the less human direct control and interaction we get, of course, the more critical those capabilities to automatically adjust become. And so naturally cyber becomes one crucial, sort of a linchpin area of technology. Another theme that I thought was actually quite fresh on the challenges side is that of governance. And, we noted, for example, that U.S. ports are the responsibility of state governments and local governments and not a federal government, and certainly not a federal government that was strategically oriented, as recently, of course, so clearly China has been, and for that matter, across the years, Japan, in a positive sense, often has been, with national government playing a key role in policy on some of these sectors that are strategically important. We have left that to different levels. On the geopolitical side, what really struck me was that the challenges in many ways are quite clear and quite stark, and they've become more dramatic to us, certainly, since the beginning of the Ukraine war. And also, of course, the war in Gaza, which has involved the Red Sea, for example, and the threats to shipping by the Houthis, and so on. So and not to mention the South China Sea, and although I think the South China Sea epitomizes another important point about the geopolitics, the challenges are pretty clear, but the solutions are not nearly as easy to achieve. And as we can see in the South China Sea, for example, the paramilitary capabilities or fishing boats or things that don't rise to the level of actual conflict, artificial islands or different sorts of developments that are short of the kind of military confrontations that would create a strong response. There's a certain ambiguity in terms of what we're capable or what we can easily do. So that leads me to the question of opportunities. And I must say there were several things that came through again and again and again that are almost verities. Let me take those first. But then, and what I wanted to conclude was several, I thought, rather creative ideas about, options for the future. All of us agree here, I think that alliance cooperation is important, that there's a complementarity between Japan's formidable capabilities in terms of shipbuilding, the large size of some of the historically important shipping companies. In Japan, of course, they've merged and there's been transformations, but just thinking of one from Japan's early modernization, NYK, of course, was right at the spearhead of that. Alliance cooperation, we have, Japan and the U.S. have very different capabilities. But speaking as an American, I've long felt, and I believe Dr. Gresh and Dr. Newsom and all of our participants do appreciate the important capabilities in manufacturing, shipbuilding, shipping. We went down to maintenance, Kaizen improvements, marginal change, quality control, just a whole series of areas. And of course, given the importance of America's global role and also the revival of America's economic role that I suppose we will hear more of regardless of what happens. There'll be big changes following our election, but one thing that will be clear is that our economy and its revival will certainly be right at, and its manufacturing as well, will be right at the heart of that. So given those, the complementarities of the U.S. and Japan, alliance and cooperation, more systematic cooperation certainly is important. There's an element of strategy. I heard Hayashi-san, for example, telling us that, you know, if you consider China's capabilities in shipping and so on, rather than complicating things with the direct over-the-top initiatives, sometimes more indirectly trying to deter China's weaponization of certain areas where still China remains relatively market-oriented. I mean, there's a limit to where that goes, but you know, there is an issue of strategy in terms of what opportunities we pursue. But to conclude, there really are some areas that struck me as almost what we would call no-brainers. The Maritime Statescraft Initiative that, you know, has been initiated already. Secretary Del Toro has begun, as was mentioned. Ship repair. The U.S., some U.S. side developments in terms of American shipyards. Some of those things actually have begun. But it's not only in that area. I don't think we can forget one element that really struck me. It came again, and Admiral again talked about global Coast Guard. Given some of the ambiguity, and there are many dimensions to this, there's the capacity building, and not only one organization. Maybe there are other analogs that we should think of, but the situation or the responses to challenges like the South China Sea do have in many ways their ambiguities. The difficulties in facing directly some of the real challenges. The capabilities that represent economic security, but are also either non-military or paramilitary or quasi-military. The Chinese, of course, have developed these things to a T. And some degree, greater degree of symmetry, no doubt, as well as the positive peace-building capabilities or just controls of, you know, illegal fishing or things like that that come about from capacity building. That, of course, was mentioned strongly, that the Coast Guard and other entities in both, and Japan has played really a key role. I was struck by this out in Palau. My wife and I are headed later in December for the South Pacific to look at some of these things as well. given the ambiguities of the situation in the Indo-Pacific, of the responses, the challenges are clear. The role of entities like Global Coast Guard, it seems to me, are important. We mentioned AUKUS for shipyards in the merchant marine. I thought Mr. Newsom's thought, I was proud that he's a SAIS alum. And we do have other people like that. They're not only or all SAIS alums, but this is something that our strategic studies has been concerned about and has produced, I think, as people who think outside the box. The idea of an AUKUS for shipyards and merchant shipping, how do you go about doing this? Well, it's an idea. Clearly we've said that something needs to be done. Almost everybody has agreed on to strengthen U.S. capabilities in key areas like shipping and shipbuilding. How do you go about it? AUKUS is probably one of the most important maritime initiatives that the United States has recently engaged in. Of course, Pillar 2 of AUKUS was mentioned, and Japan has been having important discussions with the U.S. Korea also is an element in some of these things. But maintaining a strong merchant marine, the Global Coast Guard, maritime statescraft, and all of these things under the rubric of alliance cooperation. Those are some of the things that occurred to me. Of course, we have, as Dr. Gresh mentioned, we have an audience, an important, very important audience in Japan. And we're honored, of course, to be doing this together with JITTI. To our Japanese friends, the first thing, of course, would be to stress something that I think is almost atarimai, as they might say it, or, goes without saying, namely the crucial importance of the sea lanes themselves as a maritime nation. Throughout Japan's history, or its modern history, that's been a concern. And then the issue, the complementary, well, the critical moment that we face now with the rise of maritime competition, with the delicate situation that we face in the Indo-Pacific, the role, the transition period, and even geopolitically that we may be in. We've had leadership, we just had a leadership change in Japan. We will have a leadership change in the United States in only a matter of a few months. And a decision on that, of course, within just 1 month. So what does that mean, really, in conclusion? This is a momentous time. It means, to me, and I believe this across my career, as I think many of us have, the importance of U.S.-Japan cooperation. The U.S. and Japan have deeply complementary sets of skills: creativity and precision, organization, and the ability to take important initiatives. Both of us have in our way. But these complementary skills means that we're stronger together. We have a critical moment, a difficult moment, a momentous time, but we're stronger together in facing it. So those are the conclusions that I take out of this extremely interesting symposium. Again, I just want to thank our partners in JITTI, and of course to a first-rate group of panelists and the insights that they've provided to us. I've enjoyed this a lot. I've learned a lot, as I think we all have. And so I'd like to I hope you can join me with a round of applause. Thank you. And then just one last thing, for those who were able to stay, everyone is warmly welcome to a reception on the first floor, right in the lobby of this beautiful new building. Thanks for coming.